I stood frozen in the middle of the stage, the spotlight burning into my face, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the plaque they just handed me. Behind the podium, Governor Richardson was still speaking, his voice echoing through the convention center, but I couldn't hear a single word. My eyes had locked onto two figures in the fourth row, their faces drained of color, mouths hanging open in identical expressions of shock. My mother's hand was clutched against her chest. My father had gone completely rigid, like someone had paused him mid-breath. 3 years. It had been 3 years since they'd looked at me with anything other than disgust. The last thing my mother said to me before she hung up that phone call was seared into my memory like a brand. "You're no daughter of mine, Margot." "Not anymore. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up." It all started the day I told them I'd accepted a teaching position at Westfield Elementary. I was 24, fresh out of grad school with a master's in education, and I'd never been more excited about anything in my life. I'd driven 3 hours from my tiny apartment to their sprawling estate in Edgewater Hills to share the news over Sunday dinner, naively thinking they'd be proud. I should have known better. My father, Donovan Hastings, owned the largest commercial real estate firm in the state. My mother, Vivian, sat on the boards of half a dozen corporations and spent her days at country club luncheons where the cheapest wine cost more than my monthly rent. My older brother, Preston, had followed Dad into the business and was already pulling in 6 figures before he turned 30. My younger sister, Cordelia, had married into old money and spent her days planning charity galas that raised funds for causes she couldn't be bothered to understand. Then there was me. The disappointment. The black sheep who'd chosen passion over profit. A teacher. My mother's voice could have frozen lava. She set down her wine glass with such precision it didn't make a sound. "Margot, please tell me this is some kind of joke." I forced a smile, trying to ignore the way my stomach was already twisting. "It's not a joke, Mom. I start in 2 weeks. 3rd grade. The principal said my interview was one of the best she'd ever seen, and..." "3rd grade," my father interrupted, not even looking up from his plate. "You spent 6 years in college and racked up God knows how much in student loans to teach 8-year-olds their times tables." "It's about more than times tables, Dad. It's about shaping young minds, making a difference in..." Preston laughed. Actually laughed. "Making a difference? Margs, you're gonna be making 38 grand a year. You know what my Christmas bonus was last year? More than your annual salary." My face burned. "Not everything is about money." "No, but everything requires it," Cordelia chimed in, examining her manicured nails. "How are you even going to survive? You can barely afford that sad little apartment you're in now." "I'll manage," I said, my voice quieter now. "I've always managed." My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Do you have any idea what people will say? What they'll think when they find out a Hastings is teaching in some public school? Maybe they'll think you raised a daughter who cares about something other than status," I shot back, immediately regretting it. The silence that followed was suffocating. My father finally looked at me, his expression cold and businesslike, the same one he used to fire underperforming employees. "You take this job, you're on your own. Completely. No family dinners.
No holidays.
No financial support of any kind. And if you think you're getting a dime of inheritance down the line, you can forget it." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "You're seriously giving me an ultimatum? Over a career choice?" "We're giving you a reality check," my mother said. "You want to throw your life away on some noble fantasy, that's your prerogative. But don't expect us to stand by and watch. And certainly don't expect us to support it." I looked around the table, hoping anyone, would speak up for me. Preston avoided my eyes. Cordelia was back to studying her nails. My father had returned his attention to his dinner as if I'd already ceased to exist. I stood up, my legs shaking. "Fine. If that's how you want it, fine." "Margot," my mother started, but I was already walking toward the door. "Don't," I said without turning around. "Just don't." I drove home that night with tears streaming down my face, my hands white-knuckling the steering wheel. But underneath the hurt and the anger was something else. Something harder. A kernel of determination that my parents had unknowingly planted. I'd show them. Somehow, someway, I'd prove that my choice mattered. The first year of teaching nearly broke me. Not because of the kids were amazing, but because I was doing it completely alone. My salary barely covered rent, utilities, groceries, and the minimum payments on my student loans. I ate ramen 4 nights a week. I wore the same 5 outfits on rotation. My car broke down twice, and I couldn't afford to fix it properly, so I took the bus for 3 months until I'd saved enough for a used transmission. But I kept going. My 3rd grade classroom became my sanctuary. I had 23 students that first year, and I learned every single one of their stories. There was Kenji, whose parents worked double shifts and barely spoke English. Aaliyah, who was so shy she wouldn't raise her hand even when she knew the answer. Marcus, who everyone had written off as a troublemaker but who I discovered was just bored because the regular curriculum was too easy for him. I stayed late every night planning lessons that would engage them, challenge them, make them excited to learn. I spent my own money on supplies because the school's budget was a joke. I tutored kids after school for free because they needed the help and their parents couldn't afford private tutors. And slowly, things started to change. Kenji's English improved so much that he tested into the gifted program. Aaliyah started raising her hand, then volunteering to read aloud, then running for student council. Marcus, once I started giving him advanced math problems, became one of my most enthusiastic students. But my family didn't know any of this. They'd made good on their threat. I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. Christmas came and went without a card. When Cordelia had her baby that spring, I found out through Facebook. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I was better off without their toxicity. Most days, I almost believed it. Then one night, about 18 months into my teaching career, something happened that changed everything. I was alone in my classroom at 7 p.m., grading papers and eating Chinese takeout straight from the container, when I noticed smoke coming from under the door of the janitor's closet across the hall. I ran over, threw open the door, and found the whole back wall engulfed in flames, an electrical fire that had started in the ancient wiring. I didn't think. I just acted. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the hallway and went to work. By the time the fire department arrived, I'd managed to contain it enough that the damage was limited to one closet and part of the hallway. The fire chief told me later that if I'd waited even 5 more minutes to call it in, the whole wing of the building could have gone up. The local news picked up the story. Local teacher prevents school fire from spreading, the headline read. They interviewed me, took my photo, made me sound like some kind of hero when really I'd just done what anyone would do. My phone rang that night. I didn't recognize the number. Margot. It was my mother's voice, strained and uncertain. My hand tightened around the phone. How did you get this number? I saw the news. Are you all right? I'm fine. A pause. It said you put out a fire. You could have been hurt. But I wasn't. Another pause, longer this time. Your father and we've been thinking. Maybe we were too harsh. Maybe if you wanted to come by for dinner sometime. No. Margot, don't be difficult. We're trying to. You're trying to what? Ease your conscience now that I'm on the news? I'm still the same person doing the same job you called worthless. The only thing that's changed is other people are paying attention. That's not fair. We're your parents. We want what's best for. I hung up. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear or sadness. It was anger. Pure, white-hot anger at the realization that they only cared when it made them look bad not to. I didn't hear from them again for months. In my 2nd year of teaching, I started noticing a pattern. A lot of my students were struggling not because they couldn't learn, but because they didn't have access to resources outside of school. No computers at home for research. No quiet spaces to study. Parents working multiple jobs who couldn't help with homework. So I started a program. I called it Homework Haven. 3 days a week, I'd keep the classroom open until 6 p.m. Students could come in, use the classroom computers, get help with assignments, or just have a safe, quiet place to work. I recruited other teachers to volunteer. We served snacks, nothing fancy, just granola bars and fruit and juice boxes that I bought in bulk at Costco. It started with 5 kids. Within a month, we had 20. Within 3 months, kids from other grades were asking if they could come. Other teachers wanted to start their own homework havens. The principal was thrilled. The parents were grateful. I got thank you notes, some in broken English, some with grammatical errors, but all of them heartfelt. One mother brought me homemade tamales because she didn't know how else to express her gratitude. A father who worked construction spent his Sunday building us new bookshelves for free. These people, working-class families, immigrants, single parents struggling to make ends meet, they saw value in what I was doing. They appreciated it. They respected me. My own family still thought I was wasting my life. By my 3rd year, Homework Haven had expanded to every day of the week. We had community volunteers helping out. A local coffee shop donated pastries that were a day old but still perfectly good. A retired librarian came in twice a week to do reading circles. Test scores in our school started climbing. Homework completion rates went up. More kids were showing up to class engaged and ready to learn. The district superintendent came by for a visit, spent an hour observing, and left looking impressed. Then, in October of that year, I got called into the principal's office. Mrs. Chun was sitting at her desk with a strange expression on her face, something between excited and disbelieving. "Margot, sit down. I have some news." My mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios. Budget cuts. Program elimination. Someone had complained. "The state's Office of Education Innovation has been reviewing programs across the district," she said slowly. "They were particularly interested in Homework Haven. They've been monitoring our data, looking at the impact it's had on student achievement." I nodded, not sure where this was going. "They want to nominate you for the Governor's Excellence in Education Award." I blinked. "The what?" "It's a huge honor, Margot. They only give out 5 awards each year to teachers who've demonstrated exceptional innovation and impact. There's a ceremony in the state capitol. The governor personally presents the awards. It comes with a $10,000 grant for your program and significant recognition." I couldn't process it. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. And Margot." She smiled. "You absolutely deserve this." The next month was a blur. There were interviews, forms to fill out, documentation to provide. The state education office sent people to observe Homework Haven in action. They interviewed students, parents, other teachers. They requested 3 years of data on student performance. I went through it all in a daze, half convinced someone would realize there'd been a mistake. Then the official letter came. I'd been selected as one of the 5 recipients. The ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday in January at the State Convention Center. I could bring up to 4 guests. I thought about inviting my college roommate, Shayna, who'd been my rock through everything. My neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, who'd become like a grandmother to me. Some of the teachers I'd worked with. Some of the parents whose kids had benefited from the program. I didn't even consider inviting my family. But then, 2 weeks before the ceremony, I got a text from Preston. My brother, who hadn't spoken to me in almost 3 years. "Heard about the award. Congrats. Mom and Dad know. Just thought you should be aware." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. 3 days later, my mother called. This time, I answered. "Margot, we need to talk." "No, we really don't. Please. Just hear me out." Her voice was different. Careful. Almost nervous. "Your father and I would like to attend the ceremony. To support you." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Now you want to support me? After 3 years of nothing? After telling me I was an embarrassment?" "We were wrong. We see that now. What you've accomplished it's remarkable. And we want to be there. Why? So you can tell people at your country club that your daughter won some award? So you can pretend you were proud of me all along. That's not fair. Fair? You disowned me, Mom. You cut me out of your life because I chose a career you thought was beneath us. And now that there's recognition involved, suddenly you want back in. Margot, please. I get 4 tickets to the ceremony, I said coldly. 4 seats for the people who've actually been there for me. You're not one of them. I hung up before she could respond. But the calls kept coming. My father left voicemails, his voice stiff and formal, talking about family unity and putting the past behind us. Cordelia texted, saying it would mean so much to Mom and Dad if I'd let them come. Even Preston tried, in his awkward way, to convince me to give them another chance. I blocked all their numbers. The morning of the ceremony, I woke up at 5 a.m., too nervous to sleep. I'd bought a new dress for the occasion, the nicest thing I'd owned in years, navy blue and simple but elegant. Shayna came over to help me with my hair and makeup. You look incredible, she said, squeezing my shoulders. You ready for this? I don't know, I admitted. It still doesn't feel real. It's real. And you earned every bit of it. We arrived at the convention center at noon. The ceremony started at 2, but they'd asked all the recipients to come early for photos and media interviews. The lobby was already crowded with people, other teachers, their families, state education officials, reporters. I was standing with the other 4 award recipients, all of us looking equally nervous and excited, when I saw them. My family. All of them. They were walking through the main entrance, my father in his expensive suit, my mother in a designer dress that probably cost more than my car, Preston and Cordelia trailing behind. They'd come anyway. Despite everything I'd said, despite me explicitly telling them not to, they'd come. My mother spotted me and her face lit up. She started walking toward me, her hand raised in a wave, her expression hopeful. Something in me snapped. I turned away, pretending I hadn't seen them, and walked quickly in the opposite direction. I found a side hallway and ducked into it, my heart racing, my hands shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. You okay? It was Dr. Wilson, one of the other recipients, a high school science teacher from the northern part of the state. Yeah, I lied. Just needed a minute. Family drama? I looked at him, surprised. He smiled sympathetically. I saw them trying to get your attention. And I saw your face. For what it's worth, today is about you and what you've accomplished. Don't let anyone take that away from you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The ceremony started right on time. We were all seated in the front row of the auditorium, the 5 recipients. Behind us were rows and rows of people. I didn't turn around to look for my family. I kept my eyes forward, focusing on staying calm. Governor Richardson took the stage to thunderous applause. He was a tall man with graying hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention without effort. Education is the foundation of our society, he began. The teachers we honor today have gone above and beyond the call of duty. They've innovated. They've sacrificed. They've transformed lives. He went through each recipient one by one. A kindergarten teacher who'd developed a revolutionary literacy program. A high school teacher who'd started a mentorship initiative for at-risk students. Dr. Wilson and his STEM outreach program. Then it was my turn. Margot Hastings, Governor Richardson said, and I felt like I might pass out. Ms. Hastings teaches 3rd grade at Westfield Elementary, a Title I school where 68% of students qualify for free or reduced lunch. 3 years ago, she started Homework Haven, an after-school program that provides academic support and resources to students who need it most. He went on, talking about the data, the results, the impact. I barely heard any of it. All I could think about was not tripping as I walked up to the stage. In just 3 years, Homework Haven has become a model program being replicated across the district. Student achievement has increased by 23%. Homework completion rates have nearly doubled. But more than the numbers, Ms. Hastings has created a community, a safe space where students feel valued and supported. I walked up the stairs, my legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. The governor shook my hand, his grip firm and warm. "Congratulations," he said quietly, handing me the plaque and an oversized check for $10,000. "What you've done is extraordinary." The applause was deafening. Camera flashes went off like lightning. And finally, I let myself look out into the audience. 4th row. Right side. My entire family, sitting together. My mother had tears streaming down her face. My father's jaw was tight, his eyes wide. Preston looked uncomfortable. Cordelia had her hand over her mouth. They looked shocked, stunned, like they couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. And in that moment, standing on that stage with the governor beside me and hundreds of people on their feet applauding, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Free. Not vindicated, exactly. Not victorious in the petty sense of proving them wrong. Just free. Free from needing their approval. Free from the weight of their disappointment. Free from the part of me that had still, despite everything, hoped they'd eventually understand. The ceremony continued. There were more speeches, more photos, a reception afterward with fancy canapés and sparkling cider. I moved through it all in a daze, accepting congratulations from strangers, doing interviews with local news stations, hugging the parents and students who'd shown up to support me. I managed to avoid my family for almost an hour. Then my mother found me. "Margot." I turned slowly. She looked older than I remembered. Smaller, somehow. "That was quite a speech," she said. "Very impressive." I waited. "Your father and I, we want to apologize. We were wrong. About everything. You've built something remarkable, and we should have supported you from the beginning." "You should have," I agreed quietly. "But you didn't." "I know. And I know an apology now doesn't make up for 3 years of silence. But we'd like to try. If you'll let us." I looked at her for a long moment, this woman who'd given me life but had made me feel worthless for choosing to live it on my own terms. "Do you even understand why what you did hurt so much?" I asked. "It wasn't just that you disagreed with my choice. It's that you made your love conditional. You told me I only had value if I met your standards, made the kind of money you approved of, had the kind of career that looked good at your dinner parties." "That's not." "It is. And the worst part is that you only want back in now because other people are validating what I do. The governor thinks I'm worth something, so suddenly I'm worth something to you too." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I don't need your approval anymore, Mom. I don't need your money or your connections or your validation. I have students who need me. Parents who appreciate me. A community that values what I do. That's enough." "So that's it? You're just going to cut us out forever?" "I'm going to live my life," I said. "And maybe if you can learn to respect that life without trying to change it or apologize for it or explain it away to your friends, then maybe someday we can have a relationship. But it's going to be on my terms. Not yours." I walked away before she could respond. Shayna found me a few minutes later, her eyes bright with understanding. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and meant it. "I really am." That night, I went home to my small apartment with its thrift store furniture and its walls covered in student artwork. I set the plaque on my kitchen counter and the check on my fridge with a magnet. Then I opened my laptop and started planning how to use the grant money. More computers for Homework Haven. Updated software. Maybe some comfortable bean-bag chairs for the reading corner. A small fund to help families who couldn't afford school supplies. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Kowalski. "Saw you on the news. So proud of you, dear." Then one from Kenji's mom. "Miss Hastings, you looked so beautiful. Kenji is telling everyone his teacher met the governor." Then Marcus's dad. "You deserve every bit of this. Thank you for everything you do." I sat there reading messages from the people who become my real family, the community I'd built through shared purpose and mutual respect, and I realized something. My parents had been right about one thing, all those years ago. My choice had defined my life. Just not in the way they'd thought. I'd chosen purpose over profit, impact over income, meaning over money. And in doing so, I discovered a richness they'd never understand, the kind that came from knowing you'd made a real difference in the world. The kind that couldn't be bought, inherited, or awarded. The kind that was actually worth something. 6 months later, Homework Haven expanded to 3 more schools in the district. A year after that, the model was being implemented statewide. I got offers for higher-paying administrative positions, but I turned them all down. I loved my classroom. I loved my students. I loved watching their faces light up when something finally clicked, when they realized they were capable of more than they'd thought. My parents and I eventually found a kind of détente. We had dinner occasionally, stiff and formal affairs where we talked about safe topics and avoided the past. They'd never fully understand my choices, and I'd accepted I didn't need them to. But every time I walked into my classroom, every time a struggling student finally grasped a difficult concept, every time a parent thanked me with tears in their eyes for believing in their child, I knew I'd made the right choice. And that was all the validation I needed.